Below the waves of the overworld's treacherous oceans, a civilization lurks, unknown to those above. A hidden empire of fantastical architecture and genius intellects, driven from the land by their own foolhardy actions. Just as their dominance above the waves had been limited, so too would be their time beneath them. For once more their disregard and hubris would be their ultimate downfall, only this time it would unleash a curse that would change the shape of the overworld forever. Gods had begun. Humanity had all players deep and challenging, different is less likely to get me horribly Throughout the ages, countless civilizations have risen and spread across the overworld, only to inevitably fall to another rising power, or the burden of their own uncontrolled expansion. While very little evidence of great cities or advanced technology remains to present day, the presence of sporadic ruins and crumbling temples dotted across the landscape hint at the existence of these long-lost cultures. There was one civilization, however, whose great achievements still stand as a testament to their might, protected from thieves and vandals by the crushing weight of the ocean. Their great achievements didn't begin below the waves, however, for once their civilization spread far and wide across the land, basking in the sun that, for them it was believed, would never set. Beginning like any other fledgling power, the ones who had become the drowned, set to expanding their influence, first to surrounding towns and villages, but soon moving on to larger city-states and eventually neighbouring kingdoms. Again, like any other empire, they would attempt to annex these lands, by force if necessary, but where the expansion of those past civilizations would inevitably stall and collapse back on upon themselves, the as yet undrowned did not. Where countries of old fell to anarchy, signaling their nearing demise, this new commonwealth prospered. While it was true they were very much like other powers, there was one significant, although often overlooked factor that distinguished them. The undrowned were lovers of science, progress, and all things that look towards the future. They created innovative technologies that the world had never seen. Coal-powered engines, redstone circuits, and even music through the arrangement of novel loot boxes. For a time, all of this technology attracted people from all over, and eventually the archaic need for war to conquer a land was no longer required. So eager were the surrounding lands to join this technological utopia. But as the population grew, so did the power requirements, and the coal needed to produce it. Whole mountains were turned inside out in order to gather the resources. Vast trenches excavated, and soon large areas of the overworld became as desolate wastelands, the ecology having collapsed from overmining. This was not all though, for the burning of the precious coal to sustain the lives of all those within the civilization had been slowly choking the air, warming the seas, and soon enough it would melt the icelands. It started simply enough, with surprise flooding to the more coastal regions, but it was nothing the technology of an advanced culture couldn't handle. After all, it was thought that floods like these would only occur every few centuries, but then it happened again, and again, and again, until the flooding was a yearly occurrence, and whole coastal towns had to be abandoned outright. Still though, the coal continued to be burnt, and the flooding crept ever further inland, threatening village after village, town after town. It was not until the first major city was swept below the tide that the coal ceased to burn, rapidly replaced with alternate means of power generation. But by then, it was already too late. Each coming year the waters encroached further inland, and ever-increasing numbers of people were displaced from their homes. The technological paradise that had been flocked to in the not-too-distant past had now become a sodden dystopia. Citizens now fled in droves, but wherever they went, the curse the drowned had wrought followed them. To save what was left of their crumbling civilization, something drastic would need to be done. As the waters continued to rise, various outlandish plans were pitched to the governing body. Everything from cities on stilts to artificial floating islands, and even an empire suspended among the clouds. It was quite possibly the most outrageous idea that won out though. Rather than constantly fighting against the rising tides, they would embrace them, sink below the waves and accept their fate as the drowned. Through this they may be able to reclaim some of what had been lost, reoccupy their sunken homes, and live on, having mastered a catastrophe of their own making. There was one small problem, however. They were unable to breathe underwater. As it was though, this would only end up being a small problem after all, for during the early days of the floods, the great scientists had done what they did best and innovated, spitting in the face of nature itself. To aid rescue efforts in the most impacted areas, a serum allowing for temporary water breathing had been developed. Through tweaks to the formula to make the effects permanent, mass production of the solution, and a concerted effort to disseminate the product to the entire populace, the dream of becoming an aquifaring civilization may yet become a reality. But either through the race against time to complete the project, or the drowned people's own arrogance, something had been missed in the alteration to the water-breathing solution. For a time all was as well as it could be, and the inoculated populace began to move underwater, reclaiming what they had lost. As was to be expected, there was some amount of upheaval and protest from various facets of society, but eventually everyone came to terms with the fact they had little of a choice than this new way of living. It was just as this way of life was beginning to form that the side effects began to manifest in a small set of people. They became aggressive, crazed, almost animal-like, and they would viciously attack others without warning. At first, the condition was thought to be the result of those unable to adapt to the submarine existence, but as more became afflicted, even those apparently well adjusted, the terrible truth was realized. The permanent water-breathing solution had been produced with a flaw, a chemical mistake that destroyed a person's mind, erasing their personality, reducing their intelligence, and leaving them only with the instincts of a bloodthirsty beast. After everything they had done to save their civilization, the leaders had to finally accept that they were witnessing the end of days. Those still with their faculties who knew of the condition resolved to take their own lives before becoming what amounted to a mindless zombie. For everyone else though, well, they had simply been left to their fate, to truly become what are known as the drowned, forever to roam the empty, flooded streets of their once great and shining cities. Although their culture may have fallen, their empire laying in ruins, the story of the drowned is far from over, for even in their current state, they would still spread across the world, reaching the land once again and beyond. Like this, they may even spread further than they had ever dreamt in their heyday, even if it would mean the destruction of every other living creature of the overworld. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and want to support the channel, then please consider subscribing and hit that bell so that YouTube might possibly inform you when a new video comes out. If you want to go that bit further, please feel free to support the channel on Patreon or go and buy some merchandise on Spreadshirt and Teespring. Links are all down in the description. Other than that, have a great day and I'll see you next time.